All right, today we are diving into a truly powerful novel, W. Somerset Maugham's 1925 classic, The Painted Veil. At its core, this is a story about a journey. And I don't just mean a trip across China. I mean a journey from a life of beautiful, empty illusions to one of harsh and ultimately transformative reality. It's really about what happens when that comfortable veil we all kind of drape over our lives gets violently ripped away.
So where does that title come from? Well, The Painted Veil is actually a line from a sonnet by the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. And that specific line you see here, that is the absolute philosophical heart of the entire novel. It's this idea that what we call life is often just a beautifully decorated screen, hiding a much different and sometimes pretty terrifying truth underneath.
And you know who perfectly embodies this idea? Our protagonist, Kitty Fane. When we first meet her, she is living the high life in 1920s colonial Hong Kong. We're talking parties, social climbing, the whole shebang. She's beautiful, she's charming, but man, is she superficial. And she's trapped in a marriage that she got into for all the wrong reasons. Now, the central conflict really boils down to two very different men. On one hand, you have her husband, Walter. He's this quiet, brilliant bacteriologist who is just head over heels in love with her. But to Kitty, he's dull. He's awkward. He's a nobody. And on the other hand, you have Charles Townsend. He's the Assistant Colonial Secretary, and he is everything Walter isn't. Handsome, charming, popular, and he's the center of Kitty's passionate, secret world. To put it simply, she can't stand her husband, and she absolutely adores her lover. So this affair they're having is incredibly reckless. It's happening right in her own home, in the middle of these hot Hong Kong afternoons. And then, one day, it happens. This absolutely terrifying silent moment. Kitty and Charles are together in her bedroom, and they both see it. The handle of the door, slowly, silently, turns. There were no footsteps, no warning at all. Just this quiet, horrifying motion that tells them their entire world is about to come crashing down. Yep, they've been discovered. By Walter. And just like that, the quiet, dull husband is the one holding all the power. But here's the thing. He doesn't yell. He doesn't make a big scene. No. Instead, he confronts Kitty with this cold, calculated, and just utterly shocking proposition. Now, this is not just simple revenge. Oh no, it is so much smarter and crueler than that. It's a test. Walter gives her an out. He says, look, you can have a quiet divorce and marry your lover, but there's a catch. Townsend has to put it in writing that he'll marry you. And the alternative? Oh, it's a doozy. If Townsend refuses, she has to go with Walter to this remote village, Meat Fu, that's being absolutely ravaged by a cholera epidemic. So Kitty, of course, is still completely caught up in the fantasy of their great love affair. She runs straight to Charles, thinking, my hero is going to save me. But his response? Oh man, it is immediate and it is devastating. The second he's faced with a real scandal, he just recoils. All he can talk about is his career, his kids, his wife. All that charm just evaporates, and it's replaced by pure, ugly self-preservation. And then he delivers this final, crushing blow. And bam! That is the moment. That is when the first layer of that painted veil gets ripped right off. The truly devastating part for Kitty is the realization that Walter knew this would happen. He knew Townsend was a total coward. The ultimatum wasn't designed to get revenge on his rival. It was designed to force Kitty to finally see the man she adored for the complete fraud that he was. So really, her choice has been made for her. She's been stripped of her lover, her illusions are shattered, and now Kitty has no choice but to follow Walter deep into the interior of China. And this journey to mate Kung Fu, well, it starts as a punishment, but it ends up becoming a crucible that is going to forge an entirely new person. Meat Fu is a living nightmare. Cholera is everywhere. People are dying by the hundreds every single day. And in this hellscape, her quiet husband, Walter, becomes a kind of hero, working around the clock. Kitty, meanwhile, is just idle and miserable, until she finally decides to volunteer at an orphanage run by French nuns. And there, surrounded by all this selfless dedication, she starts to find a sense of purpose for the very first time in her life. And right in the middle of all this work, all this death, and this newfound respect she's seeing in other people, Kitty has her ultimate turning point. She looks at these nuns, she thinks about Walter's quiet heroism, and her own vanity, her selfishness, her entire former life, it all just collapses.
For the very first time, she sees herself with this brutal, painful clarity and utters this heartbreaking admission.
So just as Kitty is starting to see her husband not as some kind of jailer, but as a man of substance and courage, maybe even a man she could come to respect, tragedy strikes. The very epidemic that she's been living alongside finally breaches the walls of their own home. The irony here is just crushing. Walter, the bacteriologist, the man working tirelessly to save everyone else, gets infected himself during his research, and the disease is just so swift and so unforgiving. The man who seemed completely invincible is suddenly brought down. As he's lying there dying, Kitty tries to get him to forgive her. He can barely speak, and his last words are this really cryptic line from an old 18th century poem. Now, in that poem, a good man gets bitten by a mad dog, but in the end, it's the dog that dies, not the man. It is Walter's final, bitter judgment. He feels that he, the good man, is the one dying, while the wrong person, the dog, gets to survive. So Walter's death frees Kitty, but it's not at all in the way she once dreamed of. This is no giddy escape so she can be with her lover. It's something much, much deeper. It's a profound, spiritual kind of liberation. Sure, she's free from a loveless marriage, but more importantly, she's free from that shallow, degrading infatuation that had defined her for so long. She is finally free to become her own person. Kitty returns to Hong Kong as a completely changed woman. I mean, think about it. She's a widow. She's pregnant with a child whose father might not be her husband's, and now she has to confront all the ghosts of her past life. And she does. She runs into Charles Townsend one last time, but the spell is totally broken. Where she once saw this charming god, she now just sees a vain, aging, and totally hollow man. The power dynamic has completely flipped, and she dismisses him with a kind of contempt that just leaves him stunned. She is finally truly free of him. On her journey home, Kitty thinks about the future, specifically the future of her unborn daughter, and her hope for this child becomes her ultimate resolution. She vows to raise a daughter who is self-possessed, who is independent, and who is free. Everything that Kitty herself was not. It's her promise to break the cycle of her own wasted youth. And so we're left with this question, aren't we? The Painted Veil is a story of this incredible transformation, but it really makes you wonder, did Kitty truly become a new person through all that suffering? Or did she simply learn how to paint a new, more meaningful veil over the chaos of life? It's a question that really speaks to the timeless power of redemption and that hard-won journey to finally find yourself.